Welcome to the Black Spindle podcast. Oh yeah, I can look at the camera now. I forgot about that. Today we have my brother here, Andrew Isom, and he is a composer and musician. And yeah, he has a YouTube channel. So if you're interested, you should go check him out and subscribe. Just look up Andrew Isom. He plays piano.
Is the mic able to pick me up from over here?
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess we'll start with music questions, guys.
Yeah?
Is there any instruments that you don't know how to play that you would like to learn to play?
Oh, that's a good question.
Or just any instruments you don't know how to play in general.
Well, I mean,
yeah.
You could say I don't know how to play the violin, but I mean, I did take a short class for education majors. I wasn't an education major, but I mean, so at least I learned the basics of violin. But I mean, so it's kind of hard for me to define what it means for me to not know how to play something. I guess I've never touched an oboe. I have no interest in learning one, so that's completely off the.
I guess an instrument that you don't feel comfortable like noodling on or something, I guess would be.
Well, I mean, if I noodle on a violin, I would sound terrible. I mean, just because. Well, first of all, I haven't touched one in a while, and second of all, it's really hard to get a tone on a violin. You have to really know what you're doing. I guess the same is true for woodwind instruments, but I mean, I've had more experience in that realm, except for oboes.
But yeah, back to the
also flutes.
To the original question: is there any instrument you'd like to learn?
I'd have to think about that.
Okay.
I feel like there was one, but yeah, I'm overthinking that question a lot. A didgeridoo. Or something.
That would be fun.
Don't you have to do that?
You probably have to circular breathe. I wouldn't be surprised now that you bring it up.
I've heard of that somewhere. The mic says cardioid on it, and that must be like the sub-brand or like.
It's the type of microphone.
The type of microphone. Yeah, it's interesting.
It picks up. This means it will pick up sound from all sides.
We were actually talking about that in math recently. Oh, because the area where it picks up is probably shaped like a cardioid.
Okay.
Anyway.
Okay.
I'm just trying to think of all the instruments I know. I mean,
that'd be a good question.
Well, no, I mean like just that I know of.
Oh, okay.
It's like, wait a minute.
What instruments do you feel comfortable playing then? Flip the question around. Like, confident enough to play.
I mean, currently, I played saxophone all through high school and stuff, but I don't know how good I would sound if I picked one up again. My tone would be really weak, and it's like I played clarinet in 5th grade and probably be able to pick that up again too, but once again my tone would be even worse than the saxophone, especially. I mean, and the clarinet that I had was really not good quality anyways, but one instrument that I think it would be cool to become proficient at is electric bass. And it's like I took a guitar class and I know my notes on the bass. I maybe haven't had a whole lot of finger picking experience, but I feel like if I were to be proficient at another instrument, then I think bass would be really cool.
Yeah.
Then again, there's not a whole lot you can do with bass. You're just really important, and it's a kind of a humble position to be in too, because your job is to support everybody else, but you don't necessarily steal the show. And in a way, piano players are the same way, but you kind of have to be. It's a different role.
It's like support Hanzo.
Yeah, I didn't get that reference.
Overwatch video game.
Oh, right.
I mean, yeah, I guess base you couldn't do anything too crazy unless you're like really proficient and you do like some sort of prog stuff, like solo stuff for Zelda. I'm thinking of somebody in particular, I can't think of their name, but they do some really fancy like staccato based stuff solo. It's really nice. Anyway, what's your favorite video game?
Oh, well, right now or in general?
Both. Childhood. So like younger than 15.
I can definitely talk about that. Let's see, I was 15, I was in 9th grade. What did I play before then?
Smash Bros. Melee.
Yeah, I mean...
At least.
Yeah, I don't remember when Brawl came out. I mean, I definitely didn't have a Wii when I was in 9th grade, but just in an effort not to overcomplicate the question, I'll just start talking about how Ocarina of Time is actually better than Breath of the Wild, despite what other people think.
I'll believe you. I haven't played either.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, the Nintendo 64 had a lot of really solid games, and I think the big three were Super Mario 64, The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time, and Star Fox 64. Now, I did really like Smash Bros, but I didn't really have the one on 64 until several years later, and I don't even remember how I got it, and then it ended up disappearing. But I just know that like Smash Bros. I got familiar with really through friends, and then when I got a GameCube, we played Melee all the time. But yeah, so I guess that sort of answers the question. And then like when I got a GameCube, Super Mario Sunshine was really good. Metroid Prime was also really good. And I'm pretty sure I played Metroid Prime before I was 15, either before or after.
Okay.
But I can't remember. There's probably other big ones that I don't remember. I mean, then there's Star Fox Adventures, I guess. A lot of people that's a really not controversial. Most people hate it. Maybe that's not controversial. That's just
yeah.
But the funny thing is, I had a very interesting feel for that game, and I feel like I'm kind of sort of stealing the conversation here, but
that's fine. Makes it easier on me.
Yeah, because I mean, obviously they tried to turn Star Fox into a Zelda game, and like where you run around and it's kind of an adventure game in a way where you travel to this place and then to this place, and you have to acquire certain things. And the funny thing is, there's so many parts of the game that are really hard to get through. Because you get to that point and you're like, dang it, why am I playing this? Like, I'll just get through this part and then I'll continue liking it after that. But then you get past that part and you get to another point that's exactly the same. That's really hard and stressful. But despite all of that, like 6 months or a year would go by and I would think about that game again and be like, that was a cool game. I should play it again. And then I would play it, and I would even play all the way through and beat it again, but hating it the whole time. And so I'm pretty sure what drew me to the game every time was like the tone of the game in a way. Like the graphics and the music were very good, and they like really fit together. And just I'm a fan of adventure games anyways, so just the way that you kind of are swept up in the story that pulls you in different directions, like in a Zelda game. So it's just kind of funny how maybe my view of that game is favorable, even though I don't really enjoy playing it. Kind of, at least like it more than other people.
Yeah, and there's always the novelty of it, and it's just that type of game that you just can keep going back to, even though it's can drive you to insanity.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't played it in years, and I don't really plan on it. But,
yeah. Do you have a favorite adventure game outside of Legend of Zelda?
Does Earthbound count?
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess it kind of does. I guess
That was pretty
Metroid
weird.
Prime also counts. I mean, when it comes to before 15,
Or just
I-
any time.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like Metroid Prime had a really cool soundtrack and graphics and a really cool tone overall too. Earthbound is in a completely different category in my mind because I didn't grow up with it.
Mhm.
I only beat it 1.5 times actually. So whereas I can talk about games that I grew up with and like be really familiar with different parts of the game because I beat it so many times, but with Earthbound it's more of like I just it's sort of like your knowledge of a book that you recently read.
Mhm.
And I guess it wasn't even recent for me. It was more of I think it was maybe my freshman year of college when I actually played it for the first time.
Mm. I think I played it for the first time like a year or two ago.
Probably 2 years ago.
And I only got partway through it because
it was only whenever he could come over because he
Mhm.
played it on my other computer.
it was. I enjoyed it when I did play it though. It was really nice. I like that.
He didn't get into any of the psychedelic points, but he still got to the meat of the game at least.
Yeah.
Yeah. I enjoy that kind of like adventure, kind of turn-based fighting game. It's nice to just sit down with. You don't have to. You can just play more casual.
It's not like you have to develop your skills and maneuverability and stuff.
Yeah, run around in circles while getting attacked by style foes or whatever.
Yeah.
That's true.
Or like getting good enough at Smash Bros. To beat everyone by training yourself and stuff. You have to spend hours
You don't have
playing
to
that.
develop the motor skills. You just have to be smart enough to know what to do next.
Yeah,
It's kind of fun.
but at the same time, I actually didn't like even though I'm a pretty big fan of the storyline of Earthbound and the music and how it all fits together, the turn-based fighting actually did get on my nerves at some point because it became...
Yeah, there was a few times where
where you have to do the same section over and over again, and then just like continually get experience until like maybe you're
And it just
like
takes
you make
forever.
good decisions or something. Yeah, like I guess there's this one
where you get that lucky critical hit.
Yeah, and there's this particular point where you're trying to travel through, I think it's called Peaceful Rest Valley, and it's kind of an ironic title, I think, but like you walk through and there's these trees that can move autonomously, and one runs into you, and so you do battle with it, but then whenever you destroy the tree, it blows up, and like it takes away either
Huge amount.
like 75% of your health at least.
So you have to develop a way to like slowly go, and if you see a tree, you like move back and then move like back and forth until it disappears.
Yeah, that was something that Shane came up with. Like I was watching Shane play it, and it was, as far as I was concerned, it was brilliant cheating. You'd move.
I wasn't about to fight those trees.
To where like you'd see a tree, but then you move to where the tree was outside the frame, and then he would go, and the tree hadn't been rendered. It would just disappear. And so then of course when I got to that point, the second time I tried to play through it, I did the exact same thing, and I got through the very first time.
Yeah.
If you don't do that, you have to learn how to. You either have to learn how to paralyze the trees or like put them to sleep using hypnosis or something. Yeah, I really like how bizarre some of those ideas are.
Do you have your phone with you?
Yeah.
We need a picture of him holding dead stuff.
Oh yeah.
What's this?
We get a picture of all our guests holding dead stuff.
Oh.
He crocheted it. It's a crocheted baby.
Oh wow.
With
That's
no
violent.
arms.
That's violent.
It's art.
Okay.
But no, we just needed a weird prop, and
He's our mascot.
Yeah.
He has his own Instagram,
He does.
Really?
which you guys
Yeah.
should follow. Yeah, he does.
um,
Has a really like low quality 2004 MySpace like picture of him just with his like hair dangling, with taken from a webcam.
yeah.
It looks really good.
Yeah, we can get to that in a second. But so you went to school for music. How was that? Your experience there and stuff?
I really liked my college experience. It partly had to do with the friends that I met and stuff. mean, it wasn't until like I graduated and looking back that I feel like maybe the musical side of things was not. Well, let's see. I am online. I should probably be careful about what I say. I really like Whitworth. But I mean, I told them this, I guess, so, like, because before you graduate, you have this exit interview with your advisor, and and he was kind of asking like, what are things that I liked or didn't like, and kind of my takeaway was, or what I said was, I feel like I've had exposure to all these different little, all these different areas of music that could be career related. And it's like, I feel like I should be an expert at something and ready to go into the field, but I don't. Because it's like I've had some, like I've been composing classical music, and I still, even by graduating, I was like, I still partly don't know how to compose. Like I sort of just guess, and then I sort of put things together, and then I have a piece. And it's, but then it's like, well, what in the world does this mean to get a job? And I don't know, maybe the philosophy behind it isn't necessarily to get a job as much as it is carrying on in the scholastic tradition or something, because having that kind of education is very helpful. But then when it came to like computer, there was one class called computer applications in music, and then another class called arranging, and those were maybe, I mean, arranging is for a completely different world versus than computer applications in music. But basically it's like, in order to become like a professional arranger or orchestrator, I've been doing what I've sort of been doing now, is I have to go out of my way to develop skills that I might be able to use to do it in the field. And maybe I actually am qualified and I just downplay myself, but yeah, I feel like I'm not explaining this very well. Because when you leave music college, you have the option of like, should I go into the more computer world of mixing music, making music on my computer in general, and whether it's recording, or if it's for movies or for video games, and what that would be, or even just audio engineering in itself. And so that's one world, and then there's the world of, well, let's just write classical music and like see if we can get people to perform it and then publish it, which is in itself a different world. And then there's similar to that is like, let's compose music for band and try to get local bands to perform it, which I sort of did. It's just I dislike continuously emailing people to try to get them to play what I've performed. And because then I just don't like feeling annoying, which isn't a very good quality. In the music world, it turns out, because you have to be kind of pushy in order to get business connections.
It's called assertive.
Yeah, assertiveness. And then what's another part of it? Orchestration. I actually don't know if they still do this, but in some movies, you, like in the credits, you'll see like that somebody will be the composer, but then there'll be a list of names of people who did all of the other stuff, and one of those will be orchestration. So you'll have a completely separate person actually orchestrating all of the composed material, and I thought that would be an interesting kind of path to go down. And then there's obviously the performance field, whether it's classical performing or jazz performing or joining a rock band or something. Yeah, I don't exactly know. Oh yeah, my college experience. So basically, I felt like my college experience brought me to where I saw all of those things, but I didn't feel proficient at any of them. Maybe I actually am, but don't know it. I mean, I have orchestrated things after all and written things, but so maybe my experience wasn't as practical as I would have hoped it to be, but
probably just the individual field of whichever one you choose to go into. You'll probably feel more proficient and confident in it with experience and just doing it until you're just like, yeah, I'm good at this.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure you are at composition and things like that, and stuff you're doing right now. Like I couldn't do it. Well,
Yeah. Oh, thanks.
but yeah, I guess just whenever I think about my musical ability, I try to put it in perspective of how long did it take me to get this good at this, or and how well am I at it compared to somebody else that is also doing it, and or somebody who's been doing it the same amount of time, or that kind of thing. Just putting it in a different perspective versus just looking at yourself and stuff you can't do. But anyway,
one thing we try to do, because we have been taking guitar lessons, is to every month, or we try to do it like every month, to like look back and reflect on the progress we made that month, so that we don't get caught up in like what we can't do yet, because then it gives us hope that we'll be able to do it sooner than we think we will. That doesn't really pertain to anything that we're talking about, but I don't know. Okay,
motivational speaking.
Yeah. That has to do with performance now.
Well, I don't know a whole lot about composition and the theory side of things, but what's the most complicated thing you know?
Like just
like to a high school musician or somebody.
That's basically everyone who's listening to this.
Somebody that
at the moment that
like
is
somebody that has a base, like they can read sheet music and they can understand counting and staying in time and all that stuff, but they haven't dived into all the like chord relations and stuff like that. They only know the simple how to play music and that kind of side of things. What's the most complicated thing you can come up with?
I'm sure there is something, but like
it's probably hard to explain.
I mean, well, when you say the most complicated, it's like I'm afraid of like coming up with an idea that's like, okay, that's obviously not the most complicated. So it's like I feel like I would just need to pick a topic and then go with it.
Something that is sort of complicated to a person. That's like one of your higher levels of music theory college classes or something you could talk about.
Yeah. Let's see. I'm just going in my mind. I'm going through different composers and thinking, what did they do? Like Messiaen. I can't remember specifically what techniques he used, but if I did remember, then there'd probably be a lot to talk about there. I mean, sometimes I try to sound like Messiaen just for fun, and because I sort of like the sound, but I fake it because he has a lot of dissonant chords, but they're very beautiful in a very interesting. It's like they're very ugly, but they're like really like sometimes he'll get the timbre to be really soft, and sometimes I'll fake it by using polychords, and polychords aren't very complicated. In fact, if you're pretty basic, like if you have a basic understanding of music theory, you'll actually understand what polychords are when I explain it. It's basically if you just have a chord on top of another chord, and those chords have nothing to do with each other. Not always. Like
that was my furthest understanding of polychords, because like I said, I don't know that much about music theory and stuff.
Yeah. And I mean, polychords don't have to be dissonant, because you'll have like you could have a B minor chord on top of a C major chord, and if you lay that out, that actually forms a C major 9 sharp 11, which sounds complicated, but it'll sound pretty. It's basically the point that I'm making. Like, not all polychords sound ugly, but then again, like and so one thing that's fun with polychords is you can like you'll maybe have like a C sharp major chord over an A, and so like The C sharp major chord has a C sharp and a G sharp in it, and both of those show up in the key of A. And the G sharp is actually the major 7, so it has a somewhat pretty. So it actually kind of sounds pretty against the A, but the note in the C sharp major chord that's different is the E sharp, which is really just looks like F.
Mm-hmm.
And that F, if it's above the A, will actually clash with the E that's in the A chord, and cause the dissonance. And so it just gives you an interesting color because that dissonance is in the middle of this mushy chord.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like you just played an E and an F, a minor ninth apart. Like that would sound ugly by itself.
Yeah.
And then like one other thing to do, in order to use polychords in a cool way, you kind of want to move from more dissonance to less dissonance to more dissonance. Like, as if it's just super dissonant all the time, then there's not really any release.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you were to go to like C major, like C major and F sharp major are a tritone apart. Like that's gonna sound dissonant. So if you were to play that, but then move to something that has that clashes less, then it's gonna sound a lot really relieving. In this one piece that I made called Fire and Synergy, it's actually in my on my SoundCloud. All of my recital stuff is. It's kind of it's for solo piano, and it's kind of has this chorale based sort of thing.
I remember that.
But at one point I have a C sharp major in my left hand and a C major in my right hand, and it sounds dissonant. But then I resolve to a D major 9 chord. But technically it is also a polychord because it's an A major over a D major. But and it's a cool resolution. But yeah, that's not that complicated. In a way, I mean, it might have just sounded like nonsense to people who don't know, who aren't able to visualize this on a piano or something.
Yeah.
So maybe I should switch to something else. Although that would sound like nonsense too. Like if I started talking about 12 tone or something.
I have no idea what that is.
12 tone is actually not that great, to be honest. There's a lot of people who hate on dissonant music, and I don't hate on dissonant music. I just there are possible things to do with 12 tone, but I don't think it's that useful. Like it's useful for experimenting. But at some point, like, people started making 12 tone, but they would like bind their music in it, where it's like they made it a rule where you can't leave the 12 tone row. Like everything is sort of determined by these numbers, this set of numbers that they created.
So what is the 12 tone?
Yeah, I guess I should go over that. It's basically like, so there are 12 notes in the chromatic scale, and a 12 tone row is a series of notes. It's basically, if you were to write out a set of notes, of 12 notes without repeating a note, I don't think I explained that well.
I think I got it.
Basically you write a row of notes from every note in the chromatic scale without repeating one, and then so because of that, there's no sense of key. You can make it feel like there's a key, but the goal when you're composing a 12 tone row is to make it is to avoid sounding like you're in a key.
Okay.
So you say you're a really out there composer and you want to write something in 12 tone row, which I don't think a lot of composers actually use 12 tone anymore. I actually don't know.
So is 12 tone something that you write yourself, or is there a set 12 tone? Like, do you choose the order of the?
Oh yeah, you can.
Okay.
You choose it. Like, I actually wrote. I had a piano piece that had a 12 tone row in it, but I just didn't. I didn't force the entire piece to be 12 tone. like some composers do, where it's like you'll have like one instrument playing the row with kind of random rhythms, and then like halfway through you'll have a second instrument play the row, but they'll be playing it backwards or something with different rhythms. So it's more of like an experimental thing that I would use. Once you get to the point where, in my opinion, if you kind of trap your music into this set, where it's like it has to follow these rules, then you're no longer free to make the music what you think it should be.
Yeah.
And a lot of composers, that was actually a thing in more of the 20s and 30s with Arnold Schoenberg, and probably a little sooner too. There were people after him in the 50s and 60s where they started making music in completely different mathematical ways, where not just the notes but the rhythms and like the pitches, the volume, the rhythm, it was all mathematically created. There's one by a composer named Milton Babbitt, I think, called Philomel. I think that's what it's called. I don't know, but it's really bizarre. There's electronic instruments in it. Like there's actually in the recording or in the performance, there's a recording of a singer singing at the same time as the actual singer, and she's singing about like trees in her hair, and it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. So it's actually kind of funny. Now, to be honest, it actually sounds kind of cool to my opinion. It's not that creepy. I mean, it is creepy, but it's like once you get over it, it's like it's bizarre, but it's kind of fun. But then on the opposite side of in the bizarre world, you have this mathematically determined everything. But then you had composers like John Cage who were rolling dice to figure out like what their next note was going to be, and so it's just completely by chance. And so that's very interesting. So yeah, I guess I've gone more in a music history sort of direction than. Hopefully, this hasn't been boring.
One thing that I've seen recently is somebody will take it'll be completely randomized notes and like a randomized fill or something, and they'll take it and they'll put it on top of a set kick and bass, kind of like they'll have a set beat and they'll be going, and then every so often they'll throw in a random bit, but it's keeping the set bit, so it adds that sense of randomness, but also the sense of it's going somewhere, like it's still there. And it sounds pretty cool. I can't remember what it's called. It's like glitchy something. It's some computer genre. It's pretty cool. It sounds a lot like video game music.
One of my professors made a joke saying, like, people will listen to anything as long as it has a good beat to it.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's true. Like, there's a reason why people don't listen to some of that really bizarre stuff, but then they'll listen to bizarre stuff that has a beat to it. I mean, dubstep is pretty much the same way, because it's completely everything is for the beat. It's just, and then you can just throw in a lot of random sounds. And but then on the flip side, like there was a tradition called musique concrète, which is French, really. I mean, I'm assuming it started around the 30s or so, and it was basically, people were like, we don't have to use instruments to make music, we can just use random household items. And then they started just recording sounds around their house or around other things, and basically called them classical music.
I've seen that before. When I've seen it, it's been like they sample the sound and then they'll arrange it in a way to create a song. Are you talking about just straight up sounds and they'll put it?
Oh, just the sounds.
Just the sounds.
Yeah.
That's a lot more interesting than
not even with a beat. Like it'll just be kind of random things. Like you hear like a marble kind of like rolling along something while there's like yeah.
That's interesting. Well, I think we should probably end it.
How many minutes are we at?
just passed 35 and a half.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
Unless you want me to talk a bunch about progressive rock.
That would be fun, but
yeah,
we'll have to
should
save
stop.
it for next time. But thanks for joining us, and thanks for listening and watching for a change.
Yeah, hopefully I
And
didn't bore anybody. Or
I felt like I learned a lot.
Oh, good. Hopefully you learned a lot.
Yeah,
Nolan's probably watching this.
Nolan's probably getting a kick out of it. He's a music theory guy. But I'll link your channel and your SoundCloud in the description because it's pretty interesting stuff. So,
Thanks.
Yeah, again, thanks for listening and watching, and bye.